Maybe you're married. Maybe you're planning to be one day. Either way, you probably assume marriage has just always been here, that some version of a wedding goes back to the very first humans, the way hunger does or grief. It doesn't. Our species is about 300,000 years old. The oldest hard evidence of an actual marriage is around 4,000. And the thing you're picturing right now, two people getting married because they're in love, is barely 200 years old. So if marriage isn't ancient and love isn't the reason we started, when did humans start doing this? And what was it actually for? The answer is older than writing, stranger than romance, and part of it was running inside you before you could even talk. Start before the weddings, before the contracts, before language. Long before anything we'd call a marriage, our ancestors were already doing something most mammals don't. Sticking around, a male and a female, staying together past a single mating, pair bonding. In 1981, an anatomist named Owen Lovejoy published a paper in the journal Science called The Origin of Man. His argument was radical. He said the thing that made us human wasn't the big brain or the tools. Those came later. It was how we paired off and raised our young. In his model, males who stayed and brought food back to a female, and her children had more offspring that survived. Walking upright freed the hands to carry that food. Monogamy, two legs, and the human family all tangled together at the root. It's a contested idea. Plenty of researchers think Lovejoy overreached, and the fossils don't settle it. But here's what isn't contested. Long before we built the institution of marriage, evolution had already nudged us towards staying. The wanting to stay is old, older than us. What's recent is the paperwork. Fast forward to the first cities. The earliest record we have of an actual marriage comes from Mesopotamia, around 2350 BC. Not a love poem, a transaction. Marriage shows up in the written record at almost the same moment writing itself does, because one of the first things humans wanted to put in writing about a marriage was who owned what and whose children counted. A few centuries later, around 1750 BC, the Babylonian king Hammurabi carved one of the first legal codes in history. Several of its laws are about marriage. One of them says it flatly: if a man takes a wife and there is no contract, she is not legally his wife. No paperwork, no marriage. That's how early it became a legal arrangement, a deal between families about property, inheritance, and the legitimacy of heirs. And notice what's missing from all of it. Nobody is asking whether the two people actually like each other, so why marry at all? For almost all of history, the answer was brutally practical. Marriage bound families together. It moved land, sealed alliances, settled debts, and above all, it answered the one question that obsessed every property-owning society. Whose children are these and who inherits? In ancient Greece, a father would hand his daughter over with a line about producing legitimate offspring, not happiness, legitimacy, and it usually wasn't two people either. The anthropologist George Murdoch cataloged more than 1,000 human societies. The overwhelming majority of them allowed a man more than one wife. Strict, lifelong, one and only monogamy, the thing we treat as the obvious default, was the rule in well under 1% of them. But here's the honest part. Even in those societies, most actual marriages were still one man and one woman. Not out of principle, out of cost. Most men could never afford a second household. The dream was plural. The reality, for nearly everyone, was a single family trying to survive the winter. Marriage wasn't a romance. It was a small economy. Now here's the part nobody talks about. Some of the rules about who you marry weren't invented by any king. They were already running inside you, before you understood a single word. In 1891, a Finnish anthropologist named Edvard Westermarck made a strange claim. He said humans develop a powerful sexual aversion to the people they're raised closely with in early childhood. A kind of reverse switch. Grow up beside someone in those first years, and your body quietly files them as off-limits for life. He thought this was evolution's defense against inbreeding. For decades, people ignored him. Then the evidence started arriving. In 1971, a researcher named Joseph Shepper studied the Israeli kibbutzim, communes where unrelated children were raised together all day in peer groups like siblings. He looked at nearly 3,000 marriages made by people who grew up in that system. The number who married someone from their own childhood group, someone raised right beside them before the age of 6? 0. Not a handful. None. The same pattern turned up in Taiwan, where some families raised a future bride from infancy inside the groom's home. The researcher Arthur Wolf found those marriages had more divorce, more affairs, and fewer children. Raised too close too young, and the spark simply never came. It's still argued over. Some sociologists say it's social pressure, not biology, but the through line is unsettling either way. Who you're able to fall for may have been shaped before you had the language to object, so put the layers in order and something strange appears. At the bottom, a biological pull to pair and to stay, maybe millions of years deep. Above it, an institution of property and alliance, a few thousand years old. And right at the top, thinnest of all, the idea that you marry the person you love. That idea is almost brand new. The historian Stephanie Kuntz spent years tracing it. Her conclusion was that for most of human history, choosing a husband or wife based on love would have struck people as reckless, even dangerous. Love was something that might grow after the wedding, if you were lucky. Not the reason for it. The love-based marriage only really took hold in the 1800s in Europe and America, as the old economic logic finally loosened its grip. And here's the twist she found. The very thing we complain about, that marriage feels fragile now, that it falls apart so easily isn't new either. The Romans complained about rising divorce. Victorians were sure the family was collapsing. Every generation believes marriage is dying. It never quite does. It just keeps changing under us while we insist it's standing still. Kuntz noticed one more thing, and it's the uncomfortable one. The moment we made love the foundation of marriage, marriage became more fulfilling than it had ever been, and far more breakable. Because if love is the reason you marry, then the loss of love becomes a reason to leave. We didn't inherit the marriage we imagine is timeless. We built it recently and it's still wobbling, which brings us back to that number. 300,000 years as a species, 4,000 years of recorded marriage, 200 years of marrying for love. The part that feels the most natural, that you'd stand in front of people and promise yourself to someone because your heart picked them, is the newest piece of the entire arrangement. Most humans who ever lived would not recognize it, and yet it doesn't feel new. It feels eternal, inevitable. Like it was always the point. That's the quiet trick of the whole thing. We take the most recent invention and we feel it as the oldest truth. So the next time you hear "till death do us part," remember what you're really standing on. Something older than writing, younger than our own species, and held by all of us like solid ground, even though we only laid it down a few generations ago.